Hmm. Okay, and okay now. Now you can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so microphone and then video, both of them are working.
Okay, okay, sir. Yes. So you can also share your screen by using a upward arrow is there, no? So you can share your screen.
Okay, so can you
So
just a
so
minute, a
there
minute.
is a
Now,
upward arrow is there, no?
for
Upward arrow
WhatsApp,
by
it is off then. Yeah, I have my PowerPoint on the left hand side.
okay, okay. Now just you click the arrow. Upward arrow is there, no? In the bottom
Yeah,
of the line.
uh, 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 yeah, I'm trying to find the arrow.
Uh, li- at the middle there is a call drop button, then three dots after that.
Okay, just 1 second.
Good morning, one and all present over here. Today, the 24th of March, is the second day of the International Conference on Data Science and Communication 2023, jointly organized by Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering and Department of Engineering Sciences and Humanities, SILIGURI Institute of Technology. I, Rishikesh Roy, Department of Engineering Sciences and Humanities.
I'm Anindita Sinha, Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering.
First of all, again, we would like to thank our Honorable Managing Director, Techno India Group, Shri Shottam Rai Chaudhary, for giving us this opportunity. We are also very much thankful to our respected principal, Siliguri Institute of Technology, Dr. Mithun Chakraborty, Vice President, Techno India Group, Mr. Bhaskar Roy, Mr. Jaideep Guho, Administrator, Siliguri Institute of Technology, for providing all in all an opportunity to showcase the research activities through this international conference. We welcome you all on the second day. Before the session starts, we'd like to invite Dr. Banani Adhikari Das and Dr. Manoj Shah for conducting the session as a session chair. Welcome, sir and ma'am. To begin the day, we'd like to invite our first keynote speaker, Professor Arun Majumdar. Exploring a new role, the new challenge, and the new opportunities as visiting scientist, professor, or collaborator in helping to develop innovative concepts and technology in the areas of free space, optical wireless communications, free space laser communications through atmosphere, interested in leading a research group and in offering series of lectures in development for the last 30 years from industry, university, and national laboratory settings in the area of atmospheric turbulence, effects on free space laser communications, atmospheric propagation, and adaptive optics for imaging and communication. Previous significant professional experience includes University of Colorado, full professor, Electrical Engineering and Computer Science Department. Senior Research Scientist at Lockheed, California Company. NIST Visiting Professor, Senior Scientist, Caltex, JPL, MIT, Lincoln Laboratory, Staff Member. Dr. Majumdar offered short courses in free space laser communications as a visiting professor at Brno University of Technology, Czech Republic, and numerous universities in India, and at several aerospace industries and at various conferences throughout the US. He has been an invited speaker at international conferences and consulted to industry and government. He developed his own company, LC Research, INC. His other professional goals includes online engineering course development, global, web-based through a university base. We welcome you, sir. Sir and ma'am, please do the needful. Sir, you can start, sir.
Okay. So you can hear me and you can see me, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, now I start. Before I start my presentation, I just wanted to make two comments. Number one is that I have been given 30 minutes, right? So the 30-minute, I'm going to tell you all about my experiences for my last 30 years. So that is a little bit obviously very difficult to put my 30 years of my work in 30 minutes. But that's no problem because I will just outline a few of the things. Okay, now two comments. One is that most of my talk are based on my some of the books I published, and some of the references. The references are listed at the end of my talk, at the end of my PowerPoint. I have one PowerPoint which has the references of the list of my books. So most of my materials from my talk is taken from the books. That's comment one, and then comment two is that if any of you, any student, any researcher or any faculty, I don't know if anybody is genuinely interested in free space communications, then he or she can contact me. Dr. Misro has my email address, which is with IEEE.org. So if somebody, after my talk, if somebody finds it very exciting or somebody wants to continue, get excited, then he or she can contact me. Dr. Misra has my IEEE email, which is also this one. So those are the two comments I have. Now I'm going to start my talk. And one other thing is that if somebody can think about any questions to ask, you can ask me at the end of the talk, and I will try to answer within the time limit. Okay, my slide number 1. I want to explain something that the title of my talk. There are three items. There is a free space, that is one item. There is a laser optical, another item, and then other item is that wireless communications. You can see that in my title, I just try to put something, three different items, and I can explain about my talk. So why free space? I put the word free space because this communication is about the communicating between transmitter and receiver, which is medium. It's called communications channel. And in my talk and in my whole research part, my communications channel is the free space. And that can also include very high altitude space or terrestrial space and so on. Look at the second term, laser optical. Wireless, this laser optical. So this is about the transmitting wavelengths. That's why it's a laser and optical. And I separated them, lasers and optical. Why? Because laser is more coherent source, but in the communications, some of the optical sources can be not necessarily coherent sources like a LED, and etc. And then another word is wireless communications. So these are communications, unguided communications, which means we are not really using the fiber optics, but the transmitter and receiver, they are located in the space and then communicating wirelessly. So these are the three terms. That's why I wanted to point out so that you can understand at the very beginning what I'm trying to do. And then I will discuss some of the fundamental recent advantages and applications, whatever I can do in limited time. So let me put the outline of my talk. I will discuss about the optical wireless communication, some introduction with some systems, some block background. Then the next item is the system analysis and performance. Any kind of system, obviously, in communications needs thorough analysis, and that involves propagation, optical propagation, to more complex of laser or optical wave propagations through the medium. And then ultimately, you need to measure some kind of metric, and that's I said that performance. And I will explain that what are the two terms in communications, what we use. And then I go to some of the applications, including 5G. You have heard about everybody excited about 5G and then beyond what's happening. I will briefly touch with a figure is a 5G and beyond. And then the other term, other item is optical wireless communication for global internet connectivity. So the question is that how do we use the free-space optical communications to connect remote places, remote locations? And so I will give some ideas about how the satellites and HAP, which stands for high altitude platforms, balloons, and then uh, unmanned air vehicles, UAV. So these are all connected. These are all part of the transmitting or receiving systems, and they all each of them make the communications. But that's not all. To to complete the picture, many people forget about that there is such a thing called underwater optical wireless communications. And that is also a very important part in order to communicate in remote places. So there is still the medium of underwater. We need to understand how the optical wave propagates to the underwater. How do we communicate underwater? And how do we communicate between underwater locations and in a locations on the shore or in the terrestrial medium? And then I will end the discussion with some conclusions, some near future trends, some potential solutions, and the possibilities. Okay, the next slide is evolution of how the wireless communications develop. Why we need optical wireless communications? And the first item is the demand for high speed communication. So that is, everybody knows that is we all need extremely high speed. There is demand, and the fastest growing segment of the internet. Everybody is using mobile social media, internet user devices, connections, Wi-Fi, hotspots. And this is just a number. It changes every day. Even this number is different today. 628 million by 2023. Just an idea, just to give an estimate and how large is the number we are talking about. And then immediately we need to consider that what is the speed we are talking about. And that means the speed. It comes that how do we communicate, at what speed? The fixed broadband about 110 megabit per second, and mobile speed 43.9 megabit per second, and Wi-Fi speed for mobile devices 92 megabit per second. But these are just a number. It changes. Everybody wants more and more and more high speed, higher data. And then finally, for the mobile applications. So the applications have the 300 million mobile applications will be downloaded. And again, these are all estimates just to give you an idea that what are the numbers, how large is the numbers. And then finally, some of the network, 5G in wireless world, or WWW, what is the speed of the for 5G, typically existing and typically desired 1 to 10 gigabit per second. This is, I'm talking about 5G, and for some typical like Internet of Things. And so all these numbers actually lead to that, justify that we need a high data rate, high capacity, high speed communications, and that is the whole logic about behind the optical wireless communication technology developed. That's the motivation of all this. So you agree that today's driving force that demand for high speed communication for everything: internet, video, imaging, mobile applications, everything. Everybody is looking for high speed, not only high speed, lots of data, and demands for the high capacity data. This is just one picture I try to put out just to compare that today's RF communication, radio frequency communications, and optical communication. Why I'm talking optical wireless communication? Why this is optical communications can help and RF communications cannot do? First of all, you look at the wavelength for a radio frequency. It's about 300 kilohertz to 300 gigahertz range. But whereas optical wavelength is 300 terahertz, and terahertz means 1 terahertz means 10 to the power 12 hertz. That means that think about it. Optical how high is that frequency, and then the wavelength, corresponding wavelength is also the much smaller in optical wavelength than RF. Typically, some of the radio frequency wavelength is about 30 millimeter to 3 meter. These are the wavelength I'm talking about. And optically, a typical optical wavelength which you use 700 to 1600 nanometer, which means about zero point 0.7 micrometer or 1.6 micrometer. So that's the fundamental difference there. That the tremendous bandwidth we can achieve with optical wavelength, where RF cannot achieve that kind of wavelength. And, and another thing is that RF modulation it cannot achieve the optical wavelength modulation speeds. And 1% of carrier frequency. Carrier frequency means that for optical, say, about 16 hertz, allowable bandwidth about 100 terahertz. That means 10 to the power 5 times that of typical RF carrier. So that is that separates the optical wavelength from the RF. And on the right hand side, you look at just a simple picture which is hard to read, but let me explain that. This is the gain on this axis, and this is a antenna meter size, for example. Like if you look at that about 6 inches length, 6 inches optical length, 6 inches is about here, 6 inches length optical lens, just 6 inches, that's an antenna, that's an optical antenna. It can achieve at 0.5 micrometer about a gain of 122 dB gain. Now, it's this much gain, but for about 64 meter RF antenna, it only gets about, say, 60 dB gain. So if you compare those optical gain and RF gain, then you can see that we can achieve the big antenna equivalent of an RF antenna with a small little optical lens, like 6 inches lens even. So that's just an example. Now, what's the big picture of the free space communication? I'm talking about a big picture that which covers almost everything. Now, air to air, and that can also include space to space, and then air to ground. So that is the propagation path. Air to ground means the transmitter is in the air, and in the ground there is a receiver. Ground to air is the transmitter is on the ground, and then the receiver in the air. And by air, I mean it includes the space or deep space, anything. And so the other category is the ground to ground. And these are typically called terrestrial communications. And this can be like a few hundred meter to few kilometer in the range. So these are the typical optical propagation paths. And with a picture, you can see that, air to air, like between satellites. And air to ground is from satellite or from aircraft to the ground, and then ground to air in a reverse way, and then ground to ground in a terrestrial communication. So this is just a big picture, just to get an idea that what are the big picture of the free space laser communication. And as I told you that there is a system, there is a typical simple system. Whoever, if you have taken the course in communications engineering, there is a system diagram, a communication system, and that is valid for both RF and optical wavelength. So you have a data that is you want to transmit, and naturally you want to transfer data, through a source, and this transmitter has both modulator and a laser source or any other optical sources, and then it goes through this is the communications channel, and that communication channel involves free space communication, like that involves a turbulent medium, absorption, scattering, background radiance, all this. And then eventually you collect that information with the receiver, and then you demodulate it, you do the reverse. And that way, how do you demodulate the receiver? You have a direct detection, or there is a heterodyne detection. You can do either ways. And then eventually you get the data back again with minimum loss by decoding technique. And then finally, you look at the word bit error rate. That is just one of the parameters, one of the parameters to measure how good is the communication system. So that will be measured by bit error. Excuse me. Okay, and that is the same as the block diagram of a free space optical communication data link system. And if you have a multiple data sources, so from electrical signal to optical signal with a modulator, then optical multiplex, very general diagram from optical multiplexer with a various wavelength transmitting, then go to the FSO, means free space optic channel, and then you do the reverse path with optical demultiplexer, and then you convert the optics to electrical. O/E means optical to electrical generator, and then you do, and you get the data designation. And typically laser is about 15, 20, or 1.5 micrometer wavelength. Typically 1.5 micrometer is for the laser experiment. So these are the processes: transmission, communication channel, reception, processing, and both optical transmitter receiver must be a line of sight to establish a communication link. So it has to be line of sight. However, there are some link. It can also be non-line of sight, which is the NLOS. And one of the main important things is that the optical wavelength suffers the signals or by atmospheric turbulence or atmospheric scattering processes. It is something like because of the fog, smoke, storm, sand wind, and the two build sway of the building. And note that the RF wavelength, they don't suffer that much as the optical wavelength is suffered through the atmosphere, through the atmospheric channel. So that's the advantage of RF, but RF cannot generate so much of a channel bandwidth, as we said before. So this is a very important part of the atmospheric turbulence effect on propagation, and that itself is you solve the equation, optical propagation equations, and so that is involved a lot of involvement, and in order to measure that turbulence effect, it is usually we call something called structure function, refractive index structure function. And this is defined by N stands for refractive index, and dN of bracket R means that structure function between 2 points separated by R is refractive index at a point R, and refractive index of a reference, you square them and take the ensemble average, statistical ensemble average, and that is usually proportional R to the power 2/3. And that's called R to the power 2/3 law, and with a constant called Cn squared. So this N squared is a measure actually of the strength of turbulence, and and is typically 10 to the power minus 14 to 10 to the minus 12 meter to the power minus 2/3. Now, what does the turbulence do? This is, if you the receive signal as a function of time, you can see that what fluctuations of the received signal. And ideally, there is no turbulence, and this will be small fluctuations. So this is what we want desire to achieve that. But this is in reality we get that one. So there are techniques how you can mitigate some of the turbulence effects, and this middle one shows some fluctuation of the receives intensity as a function of time. We use some of the mitigation technique. So if you plot that one as a function, as a probability density function, then you see that no turbulence is very